Hello, and welcome back to episode 2 of Miss Jen Dances, where I share lessons learned from inside and out of my classroom. My name is Jen Guglielmi, and I teach creative movement and creative ballet and modern dance in Chicago. And last week I started out, I just wanted to jump right in before I chickened out. I didn't realize that recording this second video was going to be I would procrastinate that more than the first one. but I didn't want to put that off for any longer, so I just jumped right in. But today I wanted to take a couple minutes to share with you a little bit about me, about who I am, about my particular style of teaching dance, and how I got to be a dance teacher in the first place. So teaching dance has obviously become a huge part of my life, but it's not where I expected to end up, for sure. And so I'm going to try and make this as interesting as possible, but my dance training started out really in a typical way. I went to a dance studio starting at the age of 3. I started with tap and ballet and jazz. I did pointe, very typical studio training in the suburbs of New Jersey. And we had recitals and we drilled our dances and we went to competitions, and I really loved all of that at the time. It was very what was happening in most dance studios at the time. And I had costumes with lots of sequins and really intense stage makeup and even fake eyelashes. And at the beginning, I was a terrible student. I didn't practice. I didn't know my steps. I wasn't very flexible. I didn't remember our dances. And then over time that really changed as I got more serious and really wanted to learn, and dance became more and more of an important part of my life. I started practicing at home, figuring out my own learning style. I was never good at memorization, and just started to really invest in myself and my dancing. And that was when, at a time when I really wanted to be on Broadway. I wanted to be a dancer. And when relatives asked me what I wanted to do, I would tell them I wanted to be a dancer. And they would say, "Oh, you want to be a dance teacher and you want to own your own studio?" And I was like, no, that's not at all what I want. So fast forward a little bit, and I went to high school, and my experience there was totally different. My dance teacher there, he was actually anti-competition. I had loved my competitions experiences, so this was kind of mind-blowing for me. And I was introduced to modern dance, and I started choreographing. And what I had learned was to have a really strict environment, a really, drill environment. And what I was finding was that the other students, my fellow students who were in my dances, were just not cooperating in the way I had in my dance studio. They were not bowing to my authority as a choreographer, I guess. And so my dance teacher, my high school dance teacher, he suggested that maybe instead of yelling at my dancers, I should use some compassion and kindness and use a nice voice and ask them for what I wanted. And so that really started to transform the way I communicated with people when I was in a position of being in charge of a bunch of dancers, to get the best out of them by really loving on them and treating them well and learning that lesson for myself. And then I took that with me to college, where I continued to study modern dance. I went to a small liberal arts college in Ohio called Denison University, and I loved my program there. It was amazing. It was really small and really intimate, and it basically, the dance program, the dance building, the dance department became my home. And I often slept on the floor in the dance studio in between classes. And so I started to learn more and more about modern dance there, but I also became involved in this program we had called the Creative Movement Program. And that was where students in the dance department taught dance classes on Saturday mornings to members of the community. And we we taught these classes, and they were all based on movement concepts, on exploring level or exploring size, exploring different aspects of movement and dance with various props and lots of fun, but without really having any recitals. It was shocking to me that we didn't have recitals. Instead, what we had was these end of the program celebrations where each class would share something that they had been doing in class. It was usually just an activity from class, and at the end of that, everybody got a t-shirt. There were cookies and punch, and we would just celebrate what they had learned, what our students had learned in class. So then when I graduated from college and I moved to Chicago, I needed a job. Actually, I needed a few jobs, because what I needed to do was move on and start auditioning, but I couldn't audition for pieces that were rehearsing during the day if I had a full-time regular 9-to-5 job. So I was finding these jobs that worked around, and it turned out that one of the best things to do was to become a dance teacher. And I was actually, really qualified to do it because I had been doing it for 4 years in school. And this is hilarious to me because I had sworn up and down that I was never going to be a dance teacher. That wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to be on Broadway. And then, in high school with the introduction of modern dance, and in college, my goals shifted a little bit, and I wanted to be a modern dancer. I wanted to have my own company, and that's what I really had moved to Chicago to do, was to start dancing for other people, to start looking at developing my own projects and my own company. And, to fill in the gaps, to pay my rent, I started teaching dance and fell in love with it. I mean, just fell in love with my students. I was really fortunate to get a couple of positions where I had a lot of control over my lesson plans and how I taught and what kind of vibe I brought to the classroom. And more I started to really... My classroom turns the lights off if you don't move around enough. So I'm going to go turn them back on. Sorry about that. So I really just, I started to really bring more and more of what I had learned in high school and college about how to communicate with my dancers into my classroom for my students, who are all really young. I teach mostly kids dance, and developed a style of teaching that was really focused on process and experience. My eyes were really open to the importance of the lessons that you can learn in a dance class, which is different experience being on the teacher side of that than on the student side of that. So, anywhere from mastering a skill, rising to a challenge, facing your fears, overcoming blocks, developing group cooperation skills, and fostering individual expression, and just so much more. And so now I'm absolutely in love with teaching dance, and I wouldn't trade it for anything. I would not give up my students or my classes for the world. I don't think I can ever envision myself in a place where I'm not teaching dance in some capacity. And now I rarely perform. My interest in performing has really dwindled, and which I'm totally okay with. And I love going to see other people who that's really their thing. I love going to see them perform. But for me, it wasn't lighting my fire the way that teaching started to. And so most of the dancing that I do outside of my classes is really very much for me and for my own personal enjoyment of the experience, with much less emphasis on end product than when I started out, which is crazy because when I started out, it was all about end product and recitals and performances and all of that. So very much more invested in the process for myself now, and which has been really interesting because I'm really goal oriented in that way. So yeah, that's a little bit about me and how I got to where I'm at, how I swore up and down I would never teach and would never want to have my own dance school, and now my goals have totally changed from that, obviously. And yeah, so that's my story. And like I said, in this, I'd love to get to know some of you a little better. So I'm just wondering, has that ever happened to you? Has that ever happened to you where you swore up and down that you would never do something, you wouldn't do something a certain way, you wouldn't have a certain type of career, and then you ended up doing it and loving it? If it has, I would love to hear about it, and you can post that in the comments below. And if you like this video and you want some more of Miss Jen Dances, that's me, then subscribe to my channel on YouTube, and I would be super grateful if you shared this with your friends. So until next time, happy dancing and have a great day. Bye-bye.